What's the missing ingredient in sales today? Isn't it leadership? Isn't it knowing what to do and how to do it instead of just mindless activities, mindless KPIs, mindless operations and administration? It's determining what should we work on, how should we work on it, and in what priority. That's really what leadership, or elements of what leadership is. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is how do you build up a great sales team? What are great sales activities? How do you lead an organization? Now, if you're a rep, you're like, well, I'm not a leader. You're a leader of you. You might be a leader of your team. You're a leader of the deal, if you believe it or not. If you're not, you're reacting to the customer leading the deal, and that's not a good place to be, because the customer rarely buys stuff in most cases. They don't buy how often do you buy stuff other than just groceries? When was the last time you bought a car, a TV, a house? Those were all kind of new things that you were out of water on, out of your normal pattern of excellence. So that's what we have to do as individuals and managers, is lead deals, lead ourselves, and lead teams. And how well we do it will determine how well we succeed. I think this is a great topic. I think you're going to like the interview. This is a great guy. And what's interesting is I had asked for great sales leaders to be nominated to be on the show probably about a month ago, and this person received the most number of votes. So it's well worth listening to his story, his advice, and his viewpoints on selling to take your game to the next level. Before we get into it, don't you want more conversations? Is that not what every sales rep wants? Everyone says, oh, if I get up to bat, I can hit the ball. But it's just getting up to, it takes so long to get somebody on the phone. It gets so long to get a conversation started. And I had the same problem when I started my business. I could rock the phones. I was great in email, great on social, but I was selling to a new persona, and I was selling a different thing. And the classic approaches that I was taught didn't work. Didn't work good enough, certainly. So I came up with a system, and I've been polishing and modifying it over the last 7 years. And it's really exponentially grown since I put it online and start the conversation, get the meeting, because now it's being tested by the most difficult situations. Nobody joins the course because they have too many leads. The people who join they've tried cold calling, they've tried cold emailing, and they're not getting the conversation started. They're not getting engagement. And this is not a how do you pitch better course. This is how you engage with a stranger in an organic conversation and how to turn it into a business conversation. It is the most powerful skill if you do not have leads, if you're not overwhelmed with existing customers. So check it out at b2brevenue.com and take a look at it. You can schedule a call to see if it's a good match for you. Anybody in the B2B space fits really well. Also, our friends over at Co-Video. Video email is cooking right now. It's one of the biggest things going. Have you tried it? Go over there, sign up for an eval, check out their content. They've got a lot of great advice on how to make great videos. We're all on video pretty much all the time now. And even if you just check it out, see if it's a match for what you do. Might be good on the first email, but it's definitely good after that because it stands out. You get people's attention. You get people's focus. People just don't glance at it and say, who's this? What do they want? It gets curiosity and interest, and it can turn it into action. So go to covideo.com and tell them Brian sent you. Here we go. Hey, Henry, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Henry Kubiyan. I am a senior director in the IT industry. I lead a very large organization of field sellers. focused on the mid-market accounts in the United States. I'm originally from Venezuela, lived in the U.S. For about 25 years now. Spent the majority of my career either in sales or close to sales. I put a couple of stints in sales operations and marketing, but for the most part, I've been a professional salesperson, and very proud of that. It's something that I take very seriously. And as a leader, and even as a leader of leaders, I feel like my biggest responsibility is to make sure that we're constantly adapting to what the industry is throwing at us, and getting better at it.
And what brought you to the U.S.? Was it college or?
I came here. Yeah, I came here to finish college. I'd actually dropped out of college in Venezuela, managed a business there, and then had one of those epiphanies where felt like I needed to go back to school. Yeah. Came to school in the U.S. and just never left. I met my wife of 22 years, and I've been here ever since.
Yeah. Well, you certainly have the distinction of the most number of votes to be on the show, which was.
I think a couple of my account executives got a hold of that and helped to manipulate the numbers. But I certainly appreciate their vote of confidence.
I guess it doesn't matter how you did it, but I kept seeing your name pop up.
That's right.
I go, how many Henrys can there be? Right? It's not that common of a last name.
No, it isn't. It isn't.
Yeah. And no, you didn't start in high tech. You started in pharmaceuticals.
I did not.
Yeah.
No, I did not. I started selling advertising back when I was in college. I did that full time for a magazine, for a couple of years. I did a couple of different jobs that were, again, more operations in nature. And then I went to be a pharmaceutical sales rep, which I could probably
write a
job,
right?
Oh man, I could probably write a book on. It wasn't easy being a troll in a world of beautiful people.
Right.
I really had to work on my sales angle.
You didn't rely on your good looks?
No, I could not. I never had those to begin with. So I actually had to learn the product. Imagine that, but it was a great experience. It really taught me how to be fearless and face, the unknown. And then I had a career switch about 17 years ago. I started in the IT industry where I did not really know what I was doing at first, but I was good at selling and I was good at building relationships. And when over time I learned the product and came to understand the industry really well, and that's where I've been ever since.
Yeah. And how do you like it compared to pharmaceuticals? Because I got to believe
I love it.
Different. Yeah.
I love it. I mean, there's things about pharmaceutical sales that I really enjoyed. But working in the IT industry, you really become truly a consultant. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I enjoy the most, especially in the mid-market. Our customers really look to us to be advisors, and they really, they want to embrace new technology, and they're counting on us to helping them navigate through that environment.
And how was that shift? Did you have a technology background or a passion for technology?
No, I did not. No, it was, it was very humbling. I got laid off from pharmaceutical sales. I had my wife was pregnant at the time. I was building a house.
You had motivation, right?
Yes, so it required a lot of a lot of humility. I took a step back from a compensation perspective, but I felt like it was a good opportunity. So I came into the role with eyes wide open, knowing that I had to do well to succeed. And it was a very interesting opportunity. I really had to ramp up on my product knowledge quickly. I did have the advantage that I have an MBA degree, and I had business acumen from, experience built over the years. So I think that was a good, a good bridge while I got to learn the product and got to bring value to customers.
Yeah. And why the switch to leadership?
Very early, I figured out that I wanted to lead. I've always felt that leadership is a calling. It's not really you're certainly going to step away from compensation if you're in sales and you want to be a leader. That's been very sobering. But I always felt the call to enable people, to make others successful. And I became a leader 10 years ago, and I've never looked back. I've led teams of inside sales people, field sales people. I've led teams of sales specialists, and I just never turned back. And I cannot imagine, going back to being an individual contributor again. If that happens, then something's gone horribly awry.
And where do you think that comes from? Was it from sports or from your upbringing?
Yeah, I think all of the above. I probably not humble to say that I've always been sort of a natural leader, but it is something that I've always had since I was a kid. Just had that kind of dominant personality. I'm sure my siblings would agree with me, or my closest friends. But more than anything is I've always loved to teach, and I've always felt that I could make a bigger contribution through a bigger team than what I could do on my own. I was a pretty good individual contributor seller, but I recognized early on that I could do much better if I had a bigger team and make a bigger impact to the business.
Yeah. And so what turns you on about it? Is it building something? Is it helping people grow? Is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I built a reputation within the company as somebody who can build from scratch. I've done it 3 different times, including the team that I lead today. I was the first hire. I was given a very short runway to hire 25 sellers, 3 leaders, determine how we were going to compensate, how we were going to cover customers, what kind of sales motions we would have. So that was a huge challenge. Never worked as hard in my life to get that thing running. We did meet the deadline. We hired a bunch of great people, many of which are still with me. And it's the 3rd time in my career in the company that I've done this. And it's something that I really, really enjoy. And I'll tell you what I enjoy the most about that is that you get to start afresh. You don't have to deal with, old cultures or old perceptions. You can really say, hey, this is what I'm going to build, and I'm going to, so it's been very successful. I recognize that, when I'm being measured against my peers, I recognize that they didn't have that luxury, that they are having to retrain often people versus me hiring them from the beginning with these expectations.
Yeah. And is that the type of model you like, is hiring? Is it entry-level people or experienced people?
Yes. Yeah. Well, we support the mid-market customers. So technically it's an entry-level role, in the sense of many of my sellers are either new to the company or are inside sellers that are wanting to go into the field and have never done it before.
Yeah.
Now the reality is many of them are fantastic salespeople. I recognize in some of these people are better than I ever was as an individual contributor. And they definitely don't behave like they're in an entry-level role. But technically it is, yes.
And why did you decide to stay at the same company? That's kind of unusual in the technology space.
Yes. So I get that question a lot, because you're right. It's rare these days. I'll tell you, it's very simple. Look, I love the company. I love the opportunities that I've been given. So my career has progressed very steadily over the time that I've been in the company. I've gotten to do some amazing things with amazing customers, things that have fulfilled me both personally and professionally. I've always said that as long as I'm advancing, I will stay with the company. And because that's been the case, I've never felt the need to go elsewhere. I've had opportunities over the years. I've come close a couple of times. But the reality is I've never received an offer that was tantalizing enough that to make me make that decision. And look, after 17 years in the company, I know how to navigate it really well. I know how to be successful. I have a brand within the company. Yeah. And the thought of, hey, if I have to go build a brand in a different company, which is I'm not afraid to do, but they better pay me really, really well for me to make that step.
Right. Because it takes time.
Correct. And you don't have the advocacy that you have in the company that you work in, right?
Yeah.
In fact, you're probably starting out with detractors, the people that wanted the job that was offered to you.
Yeah. Especially if somebody internally wanted it,
Correct.
and now they have
Correct.
to work for you or with you. There might be a little bit of bitterness there.
Exactly.
And what do you look for in reps when you're hiring?
Yeah, great question. So I started out and I'll tell you the biggest mistake we made from the beginning was we had this vision of like this boiler room of young guns, all operating under this, narrow parameter.
Yeah.
But very quickly we realized two things. First of all, there were a lot of different reps from a lot of different backgrounds that, it was very clear to us that they were talented. So thankfully we overcame that sort of narrow perception early on. The second thing that we look for, Brian, is we really look for the intangibles. I look for the things that I cannot teach you.
Yeah.
I feel confident that I can take anybody that has good basic selling skills and teach them about technology and how to sell technology to customers in our industry. What I find myself is looking for the intangibles, the things that I cannot teach a rep, no matter how good our training is or our development programs are. Grit, determination, the ability to recover from, adversity, to have that inner drive, to succeed, the will to win deals when the competition looks overwhelming. So we've done more than 2,000 interviews over the last 3 years, and between my leaders and I find that most of the time now we look for those, those inner core sort of intangible qualities that make a good salesperson.
Yeah. But how do you see that? Because I'm sure everyone who wants the job is going to demonstrate those.
Yeah, great question. So we do a lot of vetting. I don't do just interviews. Honestly, by the time you sit in front of me and a panel of my leaders for an interview, you've already been a vetted candidate.
Yeah.
That's why we do so many of those sort of initial interviews. I also have an extensive vetting process with my current sales reps. If you come to me and you say, Henry, I want to join your team, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to send you to meet with all of my leaders, and I'm going to ask you to pick 2 or 3 sales reps out of each team. Yeah. Your call, by the way. I'm not going to give you names because I want to make this fair. I want you to talk to people that love the job, people that may not love the job as much. I want you to be able to have free access to, what the role entices and also the different perspectives on the team. And then if you pass through that gauntlet, then come back to me and we'll put you through some formal interviews. So yeah. It's a good filtering process. Again, I have the luxury of doing this because the majority of my hires come from inside the company already.
Okay.
But I do have external candidates that have vetted for over a year before they got the opportunity to interview.
And is there a particular background or a pattern that you've seen? A sports history, a certain level of adversity?
Yeah. Yes. So a couple of things that we see. First of all, people that have a history of having played sports at a high level, whether it was collegiate or high-level club sports or even professional sports. I have a couple of great sellers. One was a professional golfer. The other one was a professional hockey player in the NHL that changed his career. That seems to be a theme. Yeah. These are, and I think what I identify there are people that hold themselves to very high standards, know how to overcome adversity, are coachable. Yeah. So that seems to be a theme. And if you go through my entire roster, you'll find that the vast majority of my sellers have had that experience in some way or other. I look for people that have high business acumen. In this day and age, Brian, information is readily accessible immediately. Pick up your phone and you can find more information about the products that I'm going to sell you that I could probably memorize, right?
Yeah.
So what you need is that business acumen to understand the customer's environment, understand the customer's problem, and then figure out 1, 2, or more alternatives within your portfolio that will help them solve that problem. Customers don't come to you saying, just for the heck of it, hey, I want to buy a bunch of equipment.
I need some storage.
Correct. No, they usually will hear things like, I have data latency. Yep. And that can mean a slew of different things. And if you don't have business acumen to really understand, it's hard to position something and be seen as a credible advisor.
Yeah.
It's difficult to make that sell if the customer doesn't trust you.
And what kind of lessons have you learned? I'm sure you have along the way, having interviewed 2,000 people and building team after team of either mistakes or false positives during the interview process that turned into challenges later.
Sure. Sure. Well, there's, I keep telling my leaders, some of my leaders fret about this because they've made, hiring mistakes. I'll be honest. I made the same hiring mistakes, and I'm pretty sure I'll make them again. There's always people that have that ability to go through an interview process and portray themselves as somebody who maybe they're not. I think also we were interviewing when the team was started. We interviewed during a time of unprecedented, prosperity, and things were going well. And I'm expecting that we'll see if we made hiring mistakes here in the next year or 2 years, because the environment has changed significantly.
Yeah.
In terms of what we've uncovered, I will tell you that some people are somewhat, once they get through the process, they feel like they're somewhat entitled. Like the name of the company is just going to open doors. And they don't realize that, look, at the end of the day, it's still you in front of your customer, bringing value, and if you don't bring that value almost immediately, you probably won't get the opportunity to even have the conversation.
And how much of your time, because I've got acquired one time by a huge company, and I realized, wow, it takes a lot of work to get anything done, that there's just a lot of systems, processes and antiquated systems that have developed over 30 years. You go like, this still works?
Oh yeah. Look, again, it goes back to that, after 17 years, you know how to navigate, how to get things done. With some of these systems, hey, look, you got to live with them. You got to figure out how much time do you spend fighting the bureaucracy, or how do you make that bureaucracy work for you? Yeah. Look, I will tell you that the biggest lesson I've learned, you asked me about the 2,000 interviews. Probably one of the coolest things that I think your listeners will want to hear is, I am 100% convinced that this brand of the millennial generation as, being a problematic is just a myth. I have amazing sellers, great people working for me who come ready for battle every day, hold themselves accountable to a high level, have no entitlement. They know that it is their hard work and their consistency that is going to get them success. And it's given me a great sort of, sigh of relief. Like, okay, I think, look, I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be okay.
Yeah.
This is not the doom generation and how it's been portrayed. That's been a huge lesson for me.
Yeah, I think it's been well overstated. And I think, we were all in our 20s at one time, right?
Absolutely.
We don't remember very well.
I'm sure if you talk to my dad when I was dropping out of college and starting a business, he would have told you the same thing. This generation is doomed.
Yeah, and exactly what happened to you. You get married, you're having a kid, you're building a house. All of a sudden, your idealism and your priorities shift.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what happens when you get into your later 20s, early 30s.
Absolutely.
And I think it's more of a period of time versus a period of life than it is any generation. So I know my generation, a bunch of goofballs.
Yeah. No doubt.
Right? But we get a certain amount of pressure and you start looking for opportunities and you get focused.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've seen it, and it makes me, I'm tremendously proud of the team that I have. I couldn't ask for a better group of people.
Now, how about as far as who they sell to? Have you noticed that patterns of, millennials like to be sold to differently than Xers and boomers? And
yes, although I will tell you that at least for the time being, and this is something that has been an interesting dynamic for us from a sales motion perspective, is that the majority of the decision makers within my account set are still primarily Gen X and even boomers.
Yeah.
So that's been an interesting dynamic, right? These are not millennials selling to millennials. Sometimes they are, but we still have a lot of people, and that's something that I train them to do, right? Look, you cannot communicate the way you communicate to your peers because their expectations are different, right?
Yeah.
In the mid-market where I sell, and by the way, I spent the majority of my career in the company working with the biggest customers. Like I've sold to the absolute biggest customers in the Fortune 100 and the biggest government entities, in the land. And I've only spent the last 3 years in the mid-market, and I absolutely love the customer set because they're very dynamic, they're fearless, their adoption of technology is unbiased, right? They're not bound by legacy technologies and those bureaucratic tools you mentioned. So they will adopt whatever technology they feel they need to make their business successful. And many of these customers are either founders or owners, privately owned, very proud, very protective of their employees. So it's a very cool account set to work with versus these more established bureaucratic companies, where they just you don't see the same you don't see that commitment inside the company as you see in some of these mid-market customers.
Yeah. And what was the transition like going from a leader to a leader of leaders? Because that's a very different role.
Yeah, it was. The first time it happened, it was difficult. I was leading more experienced leaders than I was at the time, and there was a period of adaptation where we had to kind of figure out how to work together, and they needed to figure out how to take orders from somebody that they viewed as younger and less experienced. I think nowadays it's the most important thing is I feel like I'm building or training the next generation of leaders of leaders.
Yeah.
I want one of these directors that work for me to one day take over my job. So I feel that the most important thing is elevating their perspective. Most of the time they get bogged down with the tactical. They got 10 account executives across the country, and they are very focused on their call, their numbers, their activities. And I think my biggest challenge is getting them to see the business from a higher level, right? Yeah. From the level that I view it, identify trends, understand impact on the industry, the business, anticipate the changes that are coming, be prepared, embrace the unknown. I think that's where I spend most of my time coaching them on.
Yeah. And what advice would you have for somebody in sales to whether they should go into leadership or not?
Yeah, I get this question often. I tell people that if you believe that going into a leadership role is the next step in your career, then you shouldn't do it. Yeah. Leadership is a calling. You got to feel, because by the way, as a leader, you're going to make some awful decisions sometimes. There are aspects of leadership that are soul crushing. But there are many aspects of leadership that are just, they're the most fulfilling things that you can do. You need to make sure that the most fulfilling things that you can do vastly outweigh those, soul crushing moments, or you're never going to be effective. I think if you feel the need to help others, if you want to see people get better, if you like the enablement portion of sales, the training, the development, the career progression, I love to see my account executives get promoted, move on to other roles. I think that's the advice that I would give somebody who is considering it. Look, if you don't feel the calling, it's okay. You can reach the pinnacle of sales as an individual contributor. We have in the company individual contributors that make 2-3 times what I make, and they're managing the biggest accounts in the land, and they're getting calls from our CEO, on a regular basis, and they've never led anybody. So you can still be that successful. It's just a different path. Leadership it requires a different mindset and different skills, and the satisfaction that you get from the job is different than as an individual contributor.
And how about as far as, I'm sure you must see it in a big company where the people are more administrators than leaders.
Yeah, and you'll notice that I only use the word leader. I never use the word manager or administrator, because I think that's primarily a mindset. I feel a tremendous responsibility for the people that work for me. I know that they look at me for direction and guidance, and I feel like that is the biggest. That's where I spend the majority of my time, Brian. Between recruitment and setting the strategy for the organization and leading and spending time developing people, that's the majority of my time.
Yeah. I talk to sales leaders all the time, and they tell me, "Oh, I'm bogged down with this report, that report." Get an operations person, someone who loves to do that.
Absolutely. Look, you got to resist the temptation. One thing that I challenged myself with doing about 5 years ago, and I hold myself to that very strictly, is no custom reports of any kind. I don't want to spend. I want to create reports. I know how to do it, but I don't want to do that. I want to manage with the reports that come to me from those operations teams, because they're accurate. If something happens, I know who we go to fix. I don't want to be the one fixing reports, because I'm not operations. I'm a sales leader. When the pandemic hit, I challenged myself with spending time with my individual account executives. And I talked to, almost half of my team in a period of 6 weeks, which took a lot of time off, it consumed a lot of my time. But I felt like I needed to have a finger on the pulse of the organization in terms of how they were feeling, how they were reacting. It helped me understand that even the most dedicated sellers were also dealing with personal issues and family issues. And we knew that we weren't going to be as effective as we had been before. And it helped me to adapt. So I spend the majority of my time on that. I'm a leader. I am not a manager or an administrator.
Yeah, because that is the trap, because
Absolutely.
It's so easy to get pulled into it, and it blocks everything else, and you end up playing business instead of doing business.
That is absolutely correct.
Oh, cool. Hey, I really appreciate your time today, Henry. Where can people go to connect with you?
Yeah, no. Hey, thanks for the opportunity, Brian. This has been wonderful. Like I said, look, I really believe in the professional sales, career path. And if there's any way that I can help you again or your listeners, I'm available. Just reach out to me, on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to help.
Now I understand why so many people voted for him. I get a sense of a great leader in a very quick time. I've always kind of had a good BS meter where I can tell if somebody's really the real deal or just pretending. Over years and years of meeting clients, of trying to determine who is telling the truth and who is just playing the game. And this guy, he's the real deal. I really enjoyed it because when he said that he was talking about leadership, not administration, not operations, those are important functions, but they're separate. Too many people today, when you say sales manager, what it really comes down to is sales administration. And this is something that, we lost when we made the CRM the focus. And I'm not a CRM hater. I use a couple of them, and I like them. They're useful products. They're useful tools. And as your team gets bigger, they're absolutely necessary. Even though most big companies still run on spreadsheets of some kind or another. Crazy as it is, they won't admit to it, but they do. And, the spreadsheet, flies around. But what I've seen great companies do is they hire sales administrators, sales operations, people who like to keep things clean, organized, neat, and proper, because companies need that. Now, you take a highly expensive, talented manager and make them do that 2 or 3 days a week. That's not a good resource. That's not a good use of their time, nor is it for salespeople. Hire great sales administration, hire great sales operations. They're time-consuming things, and let the salespeople sell, right? And you can have them have assistance as well. Somebody who cleans it up for them, makes the forecast look the way you want. Now, I've seen two major issues with salespeople today. One is getting the meeting I talked about at the beginning, and the results from the course are astonishing because it's not just salespeople that are in the course. There's a lot of entrepreneurs who are in the course, people, solopreneurs, or starting up their company, where they need to talk with high-level people to sell their services and their products, and they don't want a cold call. They don't, sending an email, they know it doesn't work because they tried it. This works because it's organic and natural. And what I hear is, as soon as I can talk with somebody, I can get them interested. I just need to get it started. Brian, how do I do that? And we sit down and we come up with a system. Now, unlike most courses where all you get is the content itself, and it's up to you to get all the value out of it, it has office hours, which is an hour meetup every other Friday on Zoom. It's Q&A based. If you're in the course already, make sure you're checking them out. They're gold. We talk about issues. I label them in the title, the issues that we cover. So it's a good hour of interaction and community. People have found jobs with each other on office hours. People have helped each other out. People have teamed up and partnered. That's a side effect of it. The real benefit is you get to hear how other people are solving similar problems in similar industries. And to talk through it, because what I do if people don't have enough questions, I take the one-on-one content and I talk through it in the distinctions. For example, this week we were talking about how do you keep people moving and taking action and not delaying the order. So we covered that and we came up with a solution that's working like crazy right now. And it's not just me and my ideas, it's the community and what other people have tried. And it tends to polish the idea as far as like timing and technique and tailoring it to exactly what people will work with. Now, the other course, winning the complex sale or closing the complex sale, this is where I teach you how companies buy. Nobody teaches this. This is not all platitudes and idealism. This is reality. Nobody talks about the politics, the administration, the financials of how an internal company approves these things. If you spent 25 years wrestling with it, you might learn a lot. Or you can just learn from the course and start closing these deals now. You'll find out why you don't have to discount or why you don't have to take just the minimum deal, how to get access to executives, how not to get blocked, how to keep deals moving, how to think like a client, how to give them the artifacts that they need to get the deal done. It's a game changer. You'll be doing bigger deals faster with this course because you have the same capabilities, office hours every other Friday for 1 hour and unlimited one-on-ones, 30-minute Zoom calls with me, applying the course to your particular deals or situations. Got to go to b2brevenue.com, check it out. Also, you can get a free copy of ebook that I have there, and it works pretty simple. Just put your email in, and once you confirm your email, it sends you a link. So a lot of people are like, I didn't get my email, my ebook. Yeah, you didn't follow the instructions. Go figure, salespeople not following instructions. How could that happen? Make sure you're checking out the other two podcasts, Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers, and the B2B Revenue Leadership Show. Also, if you see my content flying by on your feed on LinkedIn, give it a little thumbs up. Tell a friend about the show. I'd appreciate that. A little help, a little something for the effort here. That's it. We'll see you next time.